The moonlight barely penetrated the gaps in the weathered livery stable walls, casting thin silver lines across the young woman huddled in a pile of hay. Her coat pulled tight against the September chill that swept through Elko, Nevada like an unwelcome guest. Lucy Owens had been sleeping there for 3 nights now, each one colder than the last. But at least the horses provided some warmth with their massive bodies and steady breathing, and the stableman had not yet discovered her makeshift bedroom in the back corner behind the oldest mare's stall. She had arrived in town with nothing but the clothes on her back, $23 sewn into her coat lining, and a desperate need to disappear from the life she had left behind in Missouri. The year was 1884. And women traveling alone across the territories raised eyebrows and questions, neither of which Lucy wanted to invite. So she had kept her head down, her story to herself, and her presence as invisible as possible while she figured out what came next. The problem was that $23 did not stretch far, especially when a decent hotel room cost $2 a night and meals another $1 if you wanted anything more substantial than bread and coffee. She had tried to make her money last, knowing she would need to find work quickly, but 3 days of searching had turned up nothing. The saloons wanted girls willing to pour drinks and tolerate wandering hands. The general store already had help. The seamstress had looked at her threadbare dress and scuffed boots, and told her she needed someone who could present a better image to customers. So Lucy had spent her days walking the dusty streets of Elko, watching the miners and cowboys and railroad workers go about their business, wondering how a person was supposed to start over when the world seemed determined to keep you exactly where circumstances had placed you. And at night, she snuck into the livery stable through a loose board in the back wall and tried to sleep despite the cold and the fear that tomorrow might be even harder than today. She was dreaming of Missouri, of the little house where she had grown up, when a hand gently shook her shoulder. Lucy's eyes flew open, her heart hammering as she scrambled backward into the hay, prepared to run or fight or do whatever it took to protect herself. "Easy there," a male voice said, low and calm like he was talking to a spooked horse. "I am not going to hurt you, miss. But you cannot be sleeping here." Lucy's eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the stable walls, revealing a tall man crouched a few feet away, his hands held up in a gesture of peace. He wore the clothes of a working cowboy, dusty denim and a worn leather vest, dark hair that needed a trim, and eyes that even in the shadows seemed kind rather than threatening. "I know," Lucy said, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. "I am sorry. I will leave right now. I was not stealing anything, I swear it." "I know you were not," the man said. He stayed crouched there, not moving closer, giving her space. "Sam mentioned he thought someone might be sleeping back here, but he is getting too old to be climbing around checking things. Asked me to take a look." Lucy felt her face burn with shame. She had been so careful, or so she had thought. "I will go. Just please do not tell the sheriff. I am not causing any trouble." "Where are you going to go?" the man asked, his voice still gentle. "It is the middle of the night and it is getting colder. Already dropped near freezing last night." "I will figure something out," Lucy said, even though she had no idea what that something might be. She started gathering her few belongings, stuffing them into the canvas bag that held everything she owned in the world. The man watched her for a moment, then stood up with a slight wince, as if his legs pained him. "My name is Henry Nash. I work the ranch outside town, bring horses in for Sam to board sometimes, and I am guessing you are new to Elko and down on your luck." Lucy stopped her frantic packing and looked up at him. In the faint light, she could see he was probably close to her own age of 25, maybe a year or two older, with the weathered skin of someone who spent his life outdoors. but his face was honest and she had always trusted her instincts about people. "Lucy Owens," she said quietly. "And yes, I am looking for work, just having trouble finding anyone who is hiring." "You got family here, someone expecting you," Lucy shook her head. "No family anywhere, not anymore." Henry was quiet for a long moment, and Lucy braced herself for whatever came next. Pity, probably, or worse, the kind of proposition that men sometimes made to women they thought were desperate enough to accept. But when he spoke, his words surprised her. "I've got a small place on the edge of town, just a couple rooms. Used to belong to my uncle before he passed. The master bedroom is sitting empty since I sleep in the smaller room. You could stay there until you get on your feet. No strings, no expectations. Just a warm bed and a roof that does not leak." Lucy stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You are offering me your bedroom. Why would you do that? You do not even know me." Henry shrugged, the movement easy and unself-conscious. "My mother raised me to help people when I could. And seems to me you could use some help right now. That is all there is to it." "I do not have much money," Lucy said. "I could not pay you what a room is worth." "Did not ask you to," Henry replied. "Like I said, the room is just sitting there empty. Might as well have someone using it. And maybe while you are getting settled, you could help out around the place. Cooking, mending, whatever needs doing, if you wanted to. Not a requirement, just a thought." Lucy's mind raced through all the reasons she should say no. She did not know this man. He could be lying about everything. This could be a trap, a trick, something dangerous that she would regret. But as she looked at Henry Nash standing there in the shadows of the livery stable, his expression open and honest, she found herself wanting to trust him. Needing to trust someone, because she was so tired of being alone and scared and cold. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked, needing to hear him say it one more time. Henry met her eyes steadily. "Because somebody helped me once when I needed it, and I figure that is how the world ought to work. We take care of each other when we can. That is all." Lucy took a deep breath, made a decision that felt both terrifying and right. "Okay, thank you. I accept your offer, Mr. Nash." "Henry," he corrected with a small smile. "If we are going to be housemates, might as well use first names. You got all your things?" Lucy nodded, holding up her small bag. Everything she owned fit into one canvas sack. The thought would have been depressing if she let herself dwell on it. So she pushed it away and focused on the fact that tonight she would sleep in a real bed for the first time in nearly 2 weeks. Henry led her out of the livery stable through the proper door, instead of the loose board she had been using, pausing to secure the latch behind them. The streets of Elko were quiet at this hour, most of the town already asleep, except for the saloons down by the railroad tracks, their windows still glowing with lamplight and the sound of a badly tuned piano drifting on the cold air. They walked in silence through the dusty streets, Lucy matching her pace to Henry's steady stride. He moved like someone who was comfortable in his own body, no wasted motion, no hurry. After a few minutes, he turned down a side street where the buildings grew more spread out, separated by empty lots and the occasional vegetable garden. "It is not much," Henry said as they approached a small house set back from the road, "but it is solid. My uncle built it himself back in '78 when the railroad came through, and he thought Elko might boom. Never quite happened the way he hoped, but he made a decent life here anyway." The house was simple but well-maintained, a single-story structure with a covered porch and real glass windows. In the darkness, Lucy could make out a small barn behind it and what looked like a chicken coop. Compared to the livery stable, it looked like a palace. Henry unlocked the front door and gestured for her to enter first. Inside, he lit a lamp, revealing a main room that served as both kitchen and sitting area, with a table and chairs, an iron stove, and a few pieces of simple furniture. 2 doors led off the main room, one on each side. "That is the master bedroom," Henry said, pointing to the door on the right. "It has got a real bed frame, a decent mattress, a bureau for your things. The smaller room is mine." He pointed to the left door. "Outhouse is out back. Well is just past the chicken coop. I leave for the ranch most mornings around 5. Back by 6 in the evening unless we are moving cattle or something special is going on. You are welcome to anything in the kitchen. I keep basic supplies, nothing fancy." Lucy stood in the middle of the room, overwhelmed by the sudden change in her circumstances. Just an hour ago she had been sleeping in hay, and now she was standing in a clean, warm house with a man who was offering her a room and asking nothing in return. "I do not know what to say," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion she was trying hard to control. "This is more kindness than I have seen in a very long time." "Then do not say anything," Henry replied. "Just get some rest. Tomorrow you can look for work without worrying about where you are going to sleep at night. That ought to make things a little easier." He showed her to the master bedroom, lighting another lamp so she could see. The room was simple but clean, with a bed covered in a faded quilt, a bureau with a chipped mirror, and a window that looked out toward the barn. It was not fancy, but to Lucy it felt like luxury beyond measure. "There are extra blankets in the bureau if you get cold," Henry said from the doorway. "Sleep as late as you want. I will try to be quiet when I leave in the morning." "Henry," Lucy said, turning to face him, "thank you. Truly, I will find a way to repay this kindness." He gave her that small smile again, the one that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Already told you, no repayment needed. Just pay it forward someday when you are in a position to help someone else. That is how it works." Then he was gone, closing the door quietly behind him, leaving Lucy alone in the first real bedroom she had occupied since leaving Missouri. She set down her bag, slowly removed her coat and boots, and then sat on the edge of the bed, running her hands over the quilt. It was handmade, the stitches neat and even, probably the work of Henry's late aunt or mother. Lucy lay back on the mattress, feeling her body relax for the first time in weeks. The bed was soft, the blankets warm, and the room smelled faintly of cedar and clean linen. She could hear Henry moving around in the other room, the creak of floorboards and the rustle of fabric as he prepared for bed. She should have been wary. She should have been planning an escape route in case he turned out to be less honorable than he seemed. But as exhaustion pulled her toward sleep, all Lucy could think was that maybe, just maybe, her luck was finally starting to turn. Morning came too soon and too bright, sunlight streaming through the window directly onto Lucy's face. She sat up with a start, disoriented until she remembered where she was. Henry's house. The master bedroom. A bed instead of hay. The house was quiet, and when Lucy emerged from the bedroom, she found the main room empty, a note propped against a tin of coffee on the table. The handwriting was neat and precise. "Lucy went to the ranch. Help yourself to breakfast. Coffee in the tin, eggs in the coop if the chickens have been laying, bread in the box by the stove. Make yourself at home. Henry." Lucy stood in the kitchen, reading the note 3 times before folding it carefully and setting it aside. When was the last time someone had cared whether she had breakfast? When was the last time anyone had told her to make herself at home? She made coffee, strong and black the way she liked it, and found that Henry had not been exaggerating about keeping basic supplies. The bread was only a day old, there was butter in the cold box, and when she checked the chicken coop, she found 3 brown eggs waiting in the nesting boxes. As Lucy cooked breakfast, she looked around the house with new eyes. It was clean but clearly lacked a woman's touch, the kind of small comforts and details that made a house a home. The windows had no curtains. The dishes were mismatched and chipped. The floor needed a good scrubbing, and the stove could use a proper cleaning. Lucy had told herself she was just going to take Henry's charity until she found work and could get her own place. But as she ate her breakfast and sipped her coffee, she found herself wanting to do something to repay his kindness, even if he insisted none was needed. He had mentioned she could help around the house if she wanted to. Well, she wanted to. She spent the morning cleaning, starting with the kitchen and working her way through the main room. She found a broom and swept every corner, scrubbed the floor until it shone, cleaned the windows until they sparkled. In a trunk in the corner, she discovered fabric that looked like it had been intended for curtains once, but never finished. She had needle and thread in her bag and knew how to sew. It would not be hard to finish them. By afternoon, Lucy was ready to head into town to continue her search for work. She felt different than she had the previous days, walking through Elko with her head held higher. Having a safe place to sleep, having eaten a good breakfast, it changed something fundamental in how she faced the world. She tried the general store again, even though she had already been turned away once. This time, a different clerk was working, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who actually listened when Lucy explained she was looking for work. "I do not have anything here," the woman said. "But the doctor has been saying he needs someone to help clean his office and assist with patients. You could try there. Dr. Morgan, 2 streets over, the building with the green door." Lucy thanked her and headed in the direction she had indicated. The doctor's office was easy to find, a small building that looked like it had once been a residence. The green door was slightly faded, and a hand-painted sign announced the hours. Lucy knocked, and after a moment, a man in his 50s opened the door, wire-rimmed spectacles perched on his nose, his shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "Yes," he said, sounding distracted. "I heard you might be looking for help," Lucy said quickly, before she could lose her nerve. "I am new to town and looking for work. I am good with cleaning and organizing, and I am not squeamish about blood or illness. My mother was a midwife back in Missouri, and I used to help her." Dr. Morgan looked at her properly then, his expression sharpening with interest. "Can you read and write?" "Yes, sir, and I can do basic arithmetic." "Can you follow instructions exactly as given?" "Yes, sir." Dr. Morgan stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in. Let me show you what I need." Lucy spent the next hour learning about the position. Dr. Morgan needed someone to keep the office clean and organized, to sterilize instruments, to assist with minor procedures, and to sometimes sit with patients who needed watching. The pay was $30 a month plus meals when she was working, which was more than Lucy had hoped for. "When can you start?" Dr. Morgan asked after explaining everything. "Tomorrow morning if you need me," Lucy said, trying not to sound too eager. 7 o'clock sharp, do not be late." Lucy walked back to Henry's house feeling like she was floating. A job. A real job with decent pay. In just over 24 hours, her entire situation had changed. And it was all because a cowboy had found her sleeping in a livery stable and offered her a bedroom instead of turning her away. She spent the rest of the afternoon working on the curtains, her fingers moving automatically through the familiar motions of hemming and stitching. When she heard Henry's footsteps on the porch that evening, she had one set finished and hung in the kitchen window. Henry stopped in the doorway, his eyes going to the curtains immediately. "You did not have to do that." "I wanted to," Lucy said, setting down her sewing. "You gave me a place to stay. The least I can do is make it a little nicer, and I found a job today. I start tomorrow at Dr. Morgan's office." Henry's face broke into a genuine smile, transforming his usually serious expression. "That is wonderful news. Morgan is a good man, fair employer. You will do well there." "I will pay you rent now," Lucy said. "Not full room and board, not right away, but I can give you something each month." "Keep your money," Henry said, hanging his hat on the peg by the door. "You are going to need it to get properly settled. Buy yourself a decent coat, some warmer clothes for winter. You can pay me back by cooking supper sometimes if you do not mind. I am not much of a cook myself." Lucy looked at this man who kept insisting he wanted nothing from her, who kept giving without expecting anything in return, and felt something shift in her chest. Gratitude, certainly, but also something else. Curiosity. Interest. A desire to know more about the kind of person who would do these things for a stranger. "I will make supper tonight," she said. "If you tell me what you have, I can make something decent." Henry showed her the supplies he kept, which included salt pork, beans, potatoes, and a few precious vegetables from his garden. Lucy had grown up cooking for her family, had learned to make something from nothing during hard times. Within an hour, she had a simple but filling meal ready, stew thick with vegetables and cornbread from the last of the flour. They ate together at the small table, and Lucy found herself studying Henry when she thought he was not looking. He had strong hands, calloused from work, and he moved with the careful deliberation of someone who had learned to conserve energy. When he caught her looking, she quickly turned her attention back to her food. "Tell me about the ranch where you work," Lucy said, more to fill the silence than because she particularly cared about cattle and horses. But as Henry started talking, his voice taking on warmth as he described the land and the animals, she found herself actually interested. Henry had been working at the Double R Ranch for 6 years, ever since he had come to Nevada from Wyoming after his parents died. He was good with horses, had a way of reading their temperament that made him valuable for breaking and training. He talked about the work with obvious pride, describing the satisfaction of taking a wild Mustang and teaching it to trust, to accept a rider, to become a partner instead of an adversary. "Sounds like hard work," Lucy said when he paused. "It is," Henry agreed, "but good work, honest work. You know where you stand with horses. They do not lie or put on airs, they just are what they are." Lucy wondered if that was a philosophy Henry applied to people too. Be what you are, honest and straightforward. It would explain why he had helped her without games or expectations. "What about you?" Henry asked. "What brought you all the way to Nevada?" Lucy tensed, the question she had been dreading since arriving in Elko. She could lie, make up a story about seeking adventure or following a dream. But looking at Henry's open, honest face, she found she did not want to start their friendship if that was what this was with deception. "I was engaged back in Missouri," she said slowly, "to a man my father approved of. Wealthy, established, respected in the community, but he was not kind. He had a temper, and I saw how he treated people he considered beneath him. I knew what my life would be if I married him, and I could not do it. So I broke the engagement, and my father said I was ungrateful and foolish, and if I was going to throw away such a good match, I could do it without his support, so I left." Henry listened without interrupting, his expression serious. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "That took courage. Walking away from the safe choice even when it was wrong. Not everyone can do that. Or I am just stubborn and stupid like my father said," Lucy replied, surprised by the bitterness in her own voice. "No," Henry said firmly, "you are brave. There is a difference between stubborn and knowing your own mind. You knew what you could not live with, and you chose the hard road over the wrong road. That is brave." Lucy felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back hard. She had not cried when her father threw her out. She had not cried during the long journey west or the cold nights in the livery stable. She would not cry now, no matter how much Henry's simple validation affected her. "Thank you for saying that," she managed. And thank you for supper conversation that does not involve judgment or advice about what I should have done differently." Henry smiled. "We all have our stories. No point in judging each other for them." They cleaned up together, falling into an easy rhythm of washing and drying dishes. When they were done, Henry excused himself to tend to the chickens and check on his horse in the small barn. Lucy returned to her sewing, finishing the second set of curtains as the evening light faded. When Henry came back inside, he stopped to look at the new curtains in the main room, now hanging beside the ones in the kitchen. "You are good at that," he said. "The sewing." "My mother taught me," Lucy said. "She said every woman should know how to make and mend. Never know when it might be the skill that saves you. Smart woman." "She was," Lucy agreed softly. Her mother had died 5 years ago, a fever that took her quickly despite everything the doctors tried. Her father had remarried within the year, a woman who made it clear Lucy was no longer quite welcome in what had been her home. That was part of why she had been willing to consider the engagement, even to a man she did not love. She had needed somewhere to go, someone to be, but not anymore. Now she had a job and a place to stay, and a chance to build something of her own. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The next morning, Lucy woke before dawn, determined to be ready for her first day of work. She dressed carefully in her least worn dress, pinned up her dark hair, and made coffee for both herself and Henry before he left for the ranch. "Good luck today," Henry said as he headed out the door. "You are going to do great." Lucy arrived at Dr. Morgan's office at 10 minutes before 7, not wanting to risk being late. The doctor was already there, organizing supplies in the examination room. "Good, you are punctual," he said approvingly. "Let me show you where everything is." The work was exactly what Dr. Morgan had described, cleaning and organizing and assisting. Lucy learned quickly where instruments were kept, how the doctor liked things arranged, what needed to be sterilized after each use. She helped set a broken finger for a minor, cleaned up after Dr. Morgan lanced an infected wound, and spent an hour organizing the medicine cabinet. By the end of the day, she was exhausted but satisfied. Dr. Morgan paid her for the full day in coins that Lucy tucked carefully into her pocket, the first money she had earned since leaving Missouri. "You did well," the doctor said as she prepared to leave. "See you tomorrow morning." Lucy walked back to Henry's house with her head high, feeling like she had accomplished something real. She used some of her wages to buy flour and sugar from the general store, planning to make a proper supper to celebrate her first day of work. When Henry came home that evening, he found her in the kitchen making biscuits to go with the beans and salt pork she had simmering on the stove. His face lit up when he saw what she was making. "Are those going to be ready soon? I am starving." 10 more minutes, Lucy said, checking the oven. "How was your day?" "Long. We are moving part of the herd to winter pasture, which means a lot of riding and roping and convincing cattle to go where they do not particularly want to go. But we got it done." He paused. "How was your first day?" Lucy told him about the work, about Dr. Morgan's exacting standards and the various patients she had seen. Henry listened with genuine interest, asking questions and nodding in all the right places. It felt natural, this evening routine of sharing their days, more natural than Lucy would have expected after knowing each other for such a short time. They fell into a pattern over the following weeks. Lucy worked at the doctor's office 6 days a week, learning more about medicine and patient care than she had ever expected to know. She kept the house clean, made curtains for the bedroom windows, mended Henry's clothes when she found them torn or missing buttons. She cooked supper most nights, finding satisfaction in the simple act of making something good from basic ingredients. Henry worked long days at the ranch, coming home tired but always willing to talk, to share stories about his day, to help with any heavy work that needed doing around the house. He fixed the loose board on the chicken coop, chopped wood for the stove, repaired the roof where it had started to leak. They were housemates, friends, two people sharing space and slowly learning to trust each other. But Lucy was becoming increasingly aware that her feelings were developing into something more than simple friendship or gratitude. She noticed things about Henry she had not paid attention to before. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentleness in his hands when he worked with his horse, the sound of his laugh, deep and genuine, when she said something that amused him. She tried to ignore these feelings, telling herself it was just proximity and gratitude, that she was confusing kindness with something deeper. But as October gave way to November and the weather turned colder, Lucy could not deny that she looked forward to Henry coming home each evening, that she took extra care with her appearance hoping he might notice, that she found excuses to sit closer to him when they talked in the evenings. If Henry noticed her growing feelings, he gave no sign. He was always friendly, always kind, but never crossed the invisible line they had established when she moved in. He never made her uncomfortable, never took advantage of their living situation, never suggested anything beyond the friendship they had built. Lucy told herself she should be grateful for that his respectful distance was exactly why she felt safe living there. But part of her, a part that was growing harder to ignore, wished he would see her as something other than a houseguest he had taken pity on. Winter came to Elko with a vengeance in late November, temperatures dropping and snow falling in thick white curtains. Lucy was grateful every day for the warm house and the job that kept her busy. Dr. Morgan had become increasingly dependent on her skills, teaching her to do more than just clean and organize. She could now stitch simple wounds, set basic splints, and diagnose common ailments. The work was challenging and rewarding in ways she had never expected. One evening in early December, Lucy was making supper when Henry came home covered in snow, shivering despite his heavy coat. "Storm came up sudden," he said through chattering teeth. "Nearly got lost between the ranch and town. Could not see 3 feet in front of me." Lucy immediately went into action, helping him out of his wet coat, pushing him toward the stove. "Sit down before you fall down. I will get you dry clothes and something hot to drink." She fetched clothes from his room, made strong coffee laced with a bit of the whiskey Dr. Morgan had given her for medicinal purposes, and wrapped a blanket around Henry's shoulders. He sat by the stove, gradually stopping shaking as warmth seeped back into his body. "Thank you," he said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "That was stupid of me, not starting home earlier. I knew the storm was coming, but I wanted to finish repairing the fence line." "You are here now and safe," Lucy said. "That is what matters." She served supper, and they ate mostly in silence, both of them watching the snow continue to fall outside the window. The house felt especially cozy with the storm raging beyond the walls, the stove radiating warmth, the lamplight soft and golden. "Lucy," Henry said suddenly, setting down his fork, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." He seemed to struggle with the words for a moment. "Are you happy here? Living in this house, I mean. Working for Dr. Morgan. Is this the life you want?" Lucy looked at him, surprised by the question. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you have been here for months now, and I realized I never asked if you were planning to stay or if this was always meant to be temporary. You have money saved up. You could get your own place if you wanted. I just wondered if you felt obligated to stay because I offered you the room." Lucy's heart started beating faster. Was Henry trying to suggest she should leave? Had she overstayed her welcome? But his expression was not closed or annoyed. If anything, he looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. "I am happy here," Lucy said carefully. "Happier than I have been in a very long time. I like my work, I like this house, I like this town, and I like living here with you. Unless you are trying to tell me you want me to leave." "No," Henry said quickly. "No, that is not what I meant at all. I just wanted to make sure you were staying because you wanted to, not because you felt like you had to." "I want to," Lucy said firmly. "I really want to." Something shifted in Henry's expression, his shoulders relaxing. "Good, that is good, because I like having you here. The house feels different now. Better. More like a home than just a place where I sleep." They finished supper in a comfortable silence, but Lucy's mind was racing. Did Henry's question mean something more than simple curiosity? Was he asking because he wanted her to stay for reasons that had nothing to do with housekeeping and cooking? The storm continued for 3 days, trapping them in the house together. Lucy could not go to work, and Henry could not get to the ranch. They spent the time reading, talking, playing cards, and sharing stories about their lives before Elko. Lucy learned that Henry had grown up on a small ranch in Wyoming, that he had loved his parents deeply, and their deaths in a wagon accident had shattered his world. He had come to Nevada because he could not bear to stay in the place that reminded him of everything he had lost. Henry learned that Lucy had always been a bit of a rebel, that she had questioned the expectations placed on women, that she believed people should be able to choose their own paths, regardless of what society dictated. She told him about her mother's work as a midwife, about the women she had helped who had nowhere else to turn, about learning that kindness and skill mattered more than respectability. By the time the storm cleared, something had changed between them. The easy friendship had deepened into something more intimate, though still unspoken. They moved around each other in the small house with an awareness that had not been there before, accidentally touching and then lingering in those moments of contact. Christmas approached, and Lucy found herself wanting to do something special. She had not celebrated the holiday properly since her mother died, but the thought of spending it with Henry made her want to revive old traditions. She used some of her saved wages to buy ingredients for a proper Christmas dinner, spent her evenings making small gifts: a new shirt for Henry sewn from fabric she had carefully chosen, a warm scarf knitted from yarn she had traded for at the general store. Henry seemed to have similar ideas. Lucy caught him working on something in the barn several evenings, hiding it when she came near. The secrecy made her smile, warmed her heart in ways she was no longer trying to deny. On Christmas morning, Lucy woke early and started preparing dinner. She had managed to trade for a small chicken, which she roasted with vegetables from the root cellar. She made biscuits and gravy, stewed apples with cinnamon, and even a simple cake with the last of the sugar. When Henry emerged from his room, he stopped and stared at the table she had set, decorated with evergreen branches and candles she had made herself. "Lucy, this is incredible. You did not have to go to all this trouble." "I wanted to," she said. "It is Christmas. We should celebrate." They exchanged gifts after breakfast. Lucy presented Henry with the shirt and scarf, feeling suddenly shy about how much care she had put into making them. He held up the shirt, examining the stitching with obvious appreciation. "This is beautiful work," he said. "Much finer than anything I could buy in town. Thank you." Then it was his turn. He brought out a wooden box from his room, setting it on the table in front of Lucy. She opened it carefully, gasping when she saw what was inside. It was a sewing box, beautifully crafted from different types of wood fitted together in an intricate pattern. Inside were compartments for thread, needles, scissors, all perfectly sized and organized. It was the most thoughtful, personal gift Lucy had ever received. "You made this?" she asked, running her fingers over the smooth wood. I am not good at much besides working with horses, Henry said, but I know a little about woodworking. Thought you could use something better than keeping your sewing supplies in your bag. Lucy felt tears threatening and did not try to hold them back this time. Henry, this is the most wonderful gift anyone has ever given me. Thank you. She looked up at him, and their eyes met, and suddenly the air between them felt charged with something that had been building for weeks. Henry reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Lucy, he said, his voice low and serious, I need to tell you something. I have been trying not to say anything because I did not want to make you uncomfortable, did not want you to feel pressured or like you owed me anything. But I cannot keep it to myself anymore. I have feelings for you. Real feelings that go way beyond friendship or housemates or any of that. Lucy's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. You do? Yes. I think I have since the day I found you in the livery stable, looking so fierce and scared and determined all at once. And every day since has just made me more certain that you are someone extraordinary, someone I want in my life in every way possible. Why did you not say anything before? Lucy whispered. Because I did not want you to think I had only helped you because I wanted something from you. I did not. I helped because it was the right thing to do. But along the way, I fell in love with you, the way you hum when you cook, the fierce concentration on your face when you are sewing, the kindness you show to patients at Dr. Morgan's office, the way you have turned this house into a home, all of it. All of you. Lucy stood up, moving around the table until she was standing directly in front of him. I love you too, she said, the words coming out in a rush. I have been trying not to because I did not want to ruin what we have, did not want to assume you felt anything other than friendship. But I love you, Henry Nash. I love your kindness and your strength and the way you see the best in people. I love how safe you make me feel and how you have never once made me regret trusting you. Henry stood as well, reaching out to cup her face in his hands, his touch gentle and sure. Can I kiss you, please? Lucy breathed. He kissed her softly at first, almost tentatively, as if she were something precious that might break. But when Lucy wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with all the feeling she had been holding inside, the kiss deepened, became something that spoke of months of suppressed desire and newly acknowledged love. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Henry rested his forehead against hers. I have wanted to do that for so long. Me too, Lucy admitted. I kept telling myself I was just grateful that I was confusing kindness with something else, but it was never gratitude. It was always love. They spent the rest of Christmas Day together, not as housemates or friends, but as two people who had finally admitted what had been growing between them all along. They held hands across the table during dinner. They sat close on the small sofa in the evening, Henry's arm around Lucy's shoulders, her head resting against his chest. They talked about the future, about what this meant, about what they wanted. I want to court you properly, Henry said. Do this right. Take you to dinner, walk with you through town, let everyone know you are spoken for. I would like that, Lucy said. Though I think Mrs. Henderson at the general store already suspects something. She keeps asking me pointed questions about whether you and I are just housemates. Henry laughed. The whole town probably thinks we have been together since you moved in. We might as well confirm their suspicions. Does that bother you? That people might have been talking. Not even a little, Henry said firmly. Let them talk. I am proud to be associated with you, Lucy Owens. Proud that you chose to stay here, that you chose me. The winter months passed in a blur of work and courting and falling deeper in love. Henry took Lucy to the town's social dances, where they danced together while the entire town watched and speculated. He took her to dinner at the hotel restaurant, an extravagance neither of them could really afford, but that felt important somehow, a statement of intention. They went on long walks when the weather permitted, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's thoughts and dreams and fears. Lucy continued working for Dr. Morgan, who had figured out almost immediately that something had changed between her and Henry. "About time," the doctor said when Lucy finally confirmed they were courting. "I was wondering how long it would take for you two to figure out what everyone else already knew." Spring came to Nevada slowly, the snow melting to reveal brown grass that would eventually turn green. The days grew longer and warmer, and with the change in seasons came a sense of new beginnings. One evening in late March, Henry came home from the ranch with a serious expression that made Lucy immediately worried. She had been setting the table for supper, but she stopped when she saw his face. "What is wrong? Did something happen?" "Nothing is wrong," Henry assured her quickly. "But I need to talk to you about something important, and I want you to hear me out before you say anything." Lucy nodded, her heart starting to race. "Okay." Henry took her hands, holding them carefully in his own work-roughened ones. "I have been thinking a lot about our future, about what I want and what I can offer you. I know we have only been courting for a few months, but I have known you for half a year now, and I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, Lucy. I want to marry you, build a life with you, grow old with you. I know I am just a ranch hand without much to my name except this little house and a decent horse. I know you could probably do better, find someone with more money or prospects. But I promise you this. I will work hard every day to give you a good life. I will respect you and cherish you and do everything in my power to make you happy. So what I am asking is, Lucy Owens, will you marry me?" Lucy felt tears streaming down her face, but for once they were tears of pure joy. "Yes. Yes, absolutely yes. I do not want someone with more money or prospects. I want you, just you, exactly as you are." Henry pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. Lucy could feel his heart pounding, matching the rapid beat of her own. When he kissed her, it tasted of salt from her tears and felt like a promise of everything good that was to come. They were married 6 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Elko, with Dr. Morgan serving as a witness along with Sam from the livery stable. Lucy wore a new dress she had sewn herself, pale blue cotton that Henry said made her eyes look like the sky. Henry wore the shirt she had made him for Christmas, and looked so handsome Lucy could barely breathe. The ceremony was short and simple, but when Henry slipped the plain gold band onto Lucy's finger and promised to love and honor her all the days of his life, she knew it was the realest, truest thing she had ever experienced. This was not a marriage arranged for convenience or respectability or family advantage. This was two people choosing each other, freely and completely, with full knowledge of who they were and what they were offering. After the wedding, they had a small dinner at the hotel restaurant with Dr. Morgan and Sam. Then Henry brought Lucy home, carrying her over the threshold of the house that had become theirs, the place where their story had really begun. "Welcome home, Mrs. Nash," Henry said, setting her down gently in the main room. "It was already home," Lucy said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "From the moment you brought me here and gave me the master bedroom instead of turning me away, that was when it became home." That night, Lucy moved her few belongings from the master bedroom to Henry's smaller room, which would now be their shared space. The master bedroom would be saved for when they had children, a thought that made Lucy both nervous and excited. They settled into married life with the same ease they had found as housemates and then as courting couple. Their daily routines did not change much. Lucy still worked for Dr. Morgan, Henry still put in long days at the Double R Ranch, but now they shared a bed, fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, woke up together each morning. The intimacy of marriage was everything Lucy had hoped it would be. Not just physical closeness, but emotional connection. The comfort of being fully known and fully loved. Summer arrived hot and dry, and with it came changes at the ranch. The owner was getting older and looking to sell, and he approached Henry about possibly buying him out. It would take every cent they had saved plus a loan from the bank, but it was a chance to own something, to build something permanent. Henry and Lucy stayed up late into the night discussing the opportunity, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. It would mean harder work, longer hours, more responsibility. But it would also mean building a future that was entirely theirs. What do you think? Henry asked after they had talked through all the practical considerations. Your opinion matters just as much as mine. This would affect both of us. Lucy thought about the life they had built in less than a year. Thought about the girl who had been sleeping in a livery stable, scared and alone, and the woman she had become. Thought about the man who had given her a chance when no one else would, and then given her his heart. I think we should do it, she said. I think we should take the chance and build something that is ours, together. Henry smiled, the expression transforming his face. Together. I like the sound of that. They bought the ranch in August, signing papers that made them official owners of 200 acres of land, a small herd of cattle, a dozen horses, and a ranch house that was bigger than their current home but needed work. Dr. Morgan was disappointed to lose Lucy as his assistant, but understood her need to focus on the ranch. You have been an excellent student, he told her on her last day. If you ever need work again, you come see me first. Moving to the ranch house felt like starting over, but in the best possible way. Lucy threw herself into making it a home, cleaning and repairing and organizing while Henry worked on the land and the animals. They worked from dawn until well past dark most days, falling into bed exhausted but satisfied with what they were accomplishing. By fall, they had the ranch running smoothly, and Lucy found herself thinking about the future in new ways. She and Henry had talked about having children someday, but someday suddenly felt like it could be soon. She was 26 now. Henry was 28, and they had a home and a livelihood and love more than enough to share. When Lucy realized she was pregnant in October, almost exactly 1 year after she and Henry had acknowledged their feelings for each other, she was not entirely surprised. She had noticed the signs, the missed monthly courses, the morning queasiness, the overwhelming fatigue that no amount of sleep seemed to cure. She waited until she was certain before telling Henry, wanting to be absolutely sure. She chose a quiet evening when the day's work was done, and they were sitting together on the porch watching the sunset. Henry had his arm around her shoulders, and she was leaning into his solid warmth. "Henry," she said softly, "I have something to tell you." He looked at her, immediately attentive. "What is it?" "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Henry just stared at her, and Lucy felt a flutter of fear. But then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "Are you sure? Really sure?" "Yes, I am sure. Probably due sometime in late spring if I am calculating correctly." Henry pulled back just enough to look at her face, his eyes bright with emotion. "Lucy, this is the best news, the very best. Are you happy about it?" "Yes," Lucy said, realizing as she said it that it was completely true. "I am happy, a little scared but mostly happy." "We are going to be parents," Henry said, wonder in his voice. "I am going to be a father." "You are going to be a wonderful father," Lucy assured him, "just like you are a wonderful husband." They sat on the porch until the stars came out, talking about the baby, about what they would need to prepare, about what kind of parents they wanted to be. Lucy felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of it all, but with Henry beside her, she also felt confident. They had built so much together already. They could handle this too. The pregnancy progressed normally, though Lucy was often tired and sick in the early months. Henry took over more of the ranch work, insisting that Lucy rest whenever she needed to. He became impossibly protective, worrying about every little thing, driving Lucy slightly crazy with his constant concern even as she loved him for it. Winter came again, their second in Elko, but this time Lucy was not cold or scared or alone. She was warm and loved and carrying a child conceived in love and wanted by both parents. The difference between this year and the last felt miraculous. When spring arrived and Lucy's belly had grown round with the baby, Henry started preparing the master bedroom in their ranch house, the same bedroom that had once been hers alone in the small house in town. He built a cradle from sturdy oak, sanded until it was smooth as silk. Lucy sewed baby clothes and blankets, trying not to think too hard about the actual process of giving birth. The baby came on a warm day in May, after a labor that lasted 16 hours and left Lucy exhausted but exhilarated. Henry stayed with her through all of it, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, telling her she was strong and brave and doing wonderfully. When the baby finally arrived, crying lustily, Lucy was almost surprised to discover they had a son. "A boy," Henry said, his voice choked with emotion as he held his son for the first time. "We have a son." They named him Thomas after Henry's father, and he had Lucy's dark hair and Henry's blue eyes and a temperament that seemed to alternate between peaceful and demanding with no in-between. Lucy fell in love with him immediately, this tiny person they had created, and watching Henry with their son made her fall even more in love with her husband. Henry was a devoted father from the first moment, waking for night feedings, changing diapers without complaint, spending whatever free time he had just holding Thomas and staring at him in wonder. Lucy sometimes caught him talking to the baby while he worked, explaining what he was doing and why, even though Thomas was far too young to understand. The first year of Thomas's life was exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Lucy learned to balance caring for a baby with keeping the ranch running, though there were plenty of days when she felt like she was barely managing either. But she and Henry worked together, supporting each other through the hard moments and celebrating the good ones. Thomas took his first steps when he was 11 months old, stumbling across the ranch house floor into Henry's waiting arms. He said his first word, "Da," a few weeks later, much to Henry's delight and Lucy's mock indignation. He was a happy, healthy child, curious about everything, and watching him explore the world brought Lucy a joy she had never imagined. When Thomas was 2, Lucy found herself pregnant again. This time the news was less surprising but no less welcome. Thomas would have a sibling, someone to play with and fight with and love. The pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because Lucy knew what to expect, or perhaps because she was too busy chasing a toddler to spend much time being sick. Their daughter was born in February, a cold winter night when the wind howled around the ranch house and Henry paced the floor nervously while Lucy labored. The birth was faster than Thomas's had been, and when the baby arrived, Lucy was surprised by how different her daughter looked from her son. Where Thomas had been dark-haired and serious, his sister had lighter hair and a quick smile that appeared within her first few weeks. They named her Rose after Lucy's mother, and she became the darling of the family. Thomas was initially suspicious of this new person who took up so much of his parents' attention, but he warmed to her quickly, especially once she was old enough to smile at him and later to laugh at his antics. Life on the ranch settled into a rhythm of work and family, seasons passing in their predictable cycle. The ranch prospered under Henry's management, growing slowly but steadily. Lucy found she loved ranch life, loved being able to raise her children in the open air, loved working side by side with Henry to build something that would belong to their family for generations. When Thomas was 6 and Rose was 4, Lucy found herself pregnant once more, much to her surprise. She had thought they were done having children, that 2 was plenty. But life had a way of bringing unexpected blessings. Their 3rd child, another boy they named William after Lucy's father in a gesture of forgiveness and closure, arrived in late fall. He was the easiest of their babies, sleeping through the night early, content to observe the chaos of family life with calm interest. By the time William was walking and the older children were becoming more independent, Lucy sometimes found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this life. 7 years since, she had arrived in Elko with nothing, sleeping in a livery stable and wondering how she would survive. 7 years since Henry had found her and offered her a bedroom, not knowing that he was offering her everything. On their 7th wedding anniversary, Henry surprised Lucy by taking her back to the small house in town, which they still owned and sometimes rented out. But tonight it was empty, and Henry had filled it with candles and flowers, had arranged for the children to stay with Dr. Morgan and his wife for the evening. "What is all this?" Lucy asked, looking around the main room where they had first learned to live together, to love each other. "This is where our story began," Henry said, taking her hands. "I wanted to come back here and tell you how grateful I am for every single day we have had together. When I found you in that livery stable, I had no idea I was finding the person who would make my life complete. But you did. You do." Every day. Lucy felt tears in her eyes, the happy kind that came from overwhelming emotion. "You saved me that night," she said. "Not just by giving me a place to stay, but by seeing me, really seeing me and treating me like I was someone worth saving." "You were always worth saving," Henry said firmly. "You just needed someone to help you see it." They spent the evening in that house, talking and laughing and remembering all the moments that had led them from strangers to housemates, to friends to lovers to partners in every way that mattered. They talked about their children, about the ranch, about the future they were still building together. "You ever regret it?" Lucy asked as they sat together in the spot where they had shared their first Christmas. "Helping me that night, taking on all the complications that came with it." Henry looked at her like she had said something absurd. "Regret? Lucy, finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. You and our children and this life we have built, it is everything I never knew I wanted. Everything I did not know was possible. I would not change a single moment." Lucy kissed him, pouring into that kiss all the love and gratitude and joy that filled her heart. "I love you, Henry Nash, more than I ever thought I could love anyone. I love you too, Lucy Nash. Always have, always will." They stayed in that small house until late, reluctant to leave the place where their story had truly begun. But eventually they made their way back to the ranch, to their children and their life, carrying with them the reminder of how far they had come. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and joys. Thomas grew into a serious boy who loved working with his father on the ranch, learning everything Henry could teach him about horses and cattle and the land. Rose was bright and curious, always asking questions, always wanting to understand how things worked. William was the peacemaker, the one who could smooth over fights between his siblings and charm his way out of trouble. Lucy watched her children grow and marveled at the people they were becoming. She thought sometimes about the life she had left behind in Missouri, about the man her father had wanted her to marry, about what her existence would have been if she had made different choices. But she could never regret the path she had chosen, hard as it had been, because it had led her exactly where she needed to be. When Lucy was 35 and Henry was 37, and their children were old enough to be genuinely helpful rather than mostly troublesome, they decided to expand the ranch again. They bought an additional 100 acres from a neighbor who was retiring, and with Thomas's eager help, they increased their herd. The work was hard, but it was satisfying in a way that few things were, building something that would outlast them, creating a legacy for their children and their children's children. Dr. Morgan retired when Lucy was 38, selling his practice to a younger doctor from California. At the retirement dinner the town threw for him, he made a speech about all the people who had helped him over the years, and he singled out Lucy for special mention. Lucy Nash taught me that the best help sometimes comes from unexpected places, he said. She came to Elko with nothing and made herself into someone indispensable. She is one of the finest people I have ever known, and I am proud to call her my friend. Lucy cried through the entire speech, and Henry held her hand under the table, squeezing gently in silent support and pride. As Thomas approached his 18th birthday, he began talking seriously about his future. He wanted to stay on the ranch, to eventually take over when Henry was ready to step back. The knowledge that their son wanted to continue what they had built filled both Lucy and Henry with pride and satisfaction. Rose, at 16, had different dreams. She wanted to go to San Francisco to study at a women's college there, to see more of the world before deciding where she wanted to settle. Lucy supported her daughter's ambitions even as part of her wanted to keep Rose close, safe on the ranch where Lucy could protect her. "Let her go," Henry said when Lucy expressed her concerns. "She is smart and capable, and we raised her to think for herself. She will come back to us when she is ready." Lucy knew he was right, just as she knew that part of being a good parent was letting your children make their own choices, even when those choices led them away from home. William, at 14, was still figuring out what he wanted. He liked the ranch but did not have Thomas's passion for it. He was good with numbers and had started helping Lucy with the bookkeeping, showing an aptitude that neither of his parents possessed. Lucy and Henry celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with their whole family, a dinner at the ranch house with their children, Dr. Morgan and his wife, Sam from the livery stable, who was now quite elderly but still sharp as ever, and other friends they had made over the years in Elko. It was a far cry from the quiet Christmas when they had first admitted their feelings, but it was perfect in its own way, a celebration of everything they had built together. 20 years, Lucy said that night as she and Henry lay in bed, alone in their room for the first time in hours. "Can you believe it has been 20 years? Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Henry said. "Other times it feels like you have been part of my life forever." "I suppose I have been," Lucy said. "Most of my adult life anyway, all the parts that matter." She thought about the girl she had been at 25, scared and alone in a livery stable. She would never have believed that 20 years later she would be here, married to a good man, mother to 3 incredible children, co-owner of a successful ranch, respected member of a community that had become her home. Life had taken so many turns, brought so many unexpected gifts. "What are you thinking about?" Henry asked, pulling her closer. "Just how grateful I am," Lucy said, "for all of it, for you finding me that night, for you being brave enough to offer help to a stranger, for everything that came after." "I am the grateful one," Henry said. "You could have said no. Could have decided you did not want to trust some cowboy who approached you in the dark. But you took a chance on me, and it changed my whole life." They held each other in the darkness, comfortable in the silence that came from knowing each other completely. Outside, An owl hooted, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called. The sounds of the ranch, the sounds of home. Thomas took over more and more of the ranch operations as he entered his 20s, showing a natural leadership that made the transition easy. He married at 24, a young woman named Sarah from a neighboring ranch, and they moved into the foreman's house that Henry and Lucy had built for exactly this purpose. When Thomas and Sarah had their first child, a daughter named Lucy after her grandmother, Lucy found herself stepping into the role of grandmother with more joy than she had anticipated. Rose went to San Francisco as she had planned, studied at the women's college there, and fell in love with the city. She wrote letters home every week, full of descriptions of city life and her studies and the people she was meeting. She came home for holidays, bringing with her a sophistication and worldliness that was different from ranch life, but no less valuable. At 26, she announced she was marrying a teacher she had met through the college, a kind man named David who treated her as an equal partner. They planned to stay in San Francisco, and while Lucy was sad her daughter would not be nearby, she was proud of the life Rose was building. William discovered he had a talent for business and went to work for the bank in Elko when he was 20, quickly rising through the ranks. He was smart with money, careful and ethical in a way that earned him respect from the entire town. At 28, he married the new schoolteacher, a woman named Elizabeth who shared his practical nature and his love of books. Lucy and Henry watched their children build their own lives and felt the satisfaction of knowing they had done something right. Their children were good people who made good choices and treated others with kindness and respect. What more could parents hope for? As Lucy entered her 50s, she found herself slowing down slightly, content to let Thomas handle more of the ranch work while she focused on other things. She started a small garden, growing vegetables and herbs that she used for cooking and sometimes for medicine, remembering what she had learned from Dr. Morgan all those years ago. She taught her granddaughter Lucy to sew, passing on skills her own mother had taught her. She wrote letters to Rose in San Francisco and visited William and Elizabeth in town. Henry, too, was slowing down, though he would never admit it. His hair had gone gray, and he moved with the slight stiffness of someone whose body had been worked hard for decades. But he still rode out most days, still checked on the cattle, still made sure everything was running smoothly. The ranch was his life's work, and he could not imagine stepping away from it completely. One evening when Lucy was 55 and Henry was 57, they sat on the porch of their ranch house watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained for decades. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and purple, and the air was cool with the promise of autumn. "Lucy," Henry said quietly, "do you remember that first night when I found you in the livery stable?" "Of course I remember," Lucy said. "How could I forget?" "I have been thinking about it lately," Henry said, "about how easily things could have gone differently. If I had not been the one checking the stable that night, if you had not trusted me enough to accept my help, if we had made different choices at any point along the way." "But we did not make different choices," Lucy said gently. "We made exactly the choices that led us here, together." Henry reached over and took her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. "I want you to know that every single day with you has been a gift. Even the hard days, even the days when we struggled or disagreed or faced challenges we did not know how to overcome. All of it has been worth it because I got to do it with you." Lucy felt tears prick her eyes. Even after all these years, Henry could still make her cry with his simple honesty, his straightforward expressions of love. "You saved my life that night," she said. "Not just by giving me a place to stay, but by showing me what love could be, what partnership could be, what it meant to build something together with someone who saw you as an equal. You taught me that I was worth more than I thought I was, and you have spent every day since proving it. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon, and the stars began to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. Lucy thought about the long road that had brought them from that livery stable to this porch, from strangers to partners to the kind of love that lasted decades and only grew deeper with time. She thought about the girl she had been, running from a future she could not accept, terrified and alone. She thought about the woman she had become, strong and confident and surrounded by love. And she thought about the cowboy who had given her the master bedroom and in doing so had given her everything. The years continued to roll by with the inevitability of seasons changing, bringing both joy and sorrow as life always did. They celebrated Thomas and Sarah's third child, mourned the death of Sam from the livery stable who had lived to the impressive age of 92. Rejoiced when Rose sent word that she was going to have her first baby at 34, an event that worried Lucy until the day she received the letter announcing the safe arrival of her grandson. Lucy's health remained good, though she moved more slowly than she once had, and found herself needing afternoon rests that would have been unthinkable in her younger days. Henry developed problems with his heart. Nothing immediately dangerous, but concerning enough that the doctor advised him to take things easy. Advice that Henry mostly ignored until Lucy put her foot down and insisted he listen. They were in their early 60s when Henry finally agreed to officially hand over the ranch operations to Thomas, though he still spent his days involved in the work, just at a less frantic pace. The transition was smooth, Thomas having learned everything his father could teach him and having developed his own ideas about how to run things. The ranch continued to prosper under the younger generation's management. Lucy and Henry found themselves with more time together, more quiet evenings on the porch, more lazy mornings drinking coffee and watching the sun rise over the land they had worked so hard to build. They talked about everything and nothing, comfortable in the way only people who had spent decades together could be. On their 30th anniversary, Henry surprised Lucy by taking her back to the small house in town, which was currently empty between renters. He had arranged it the same way he had on their 7th anniversary, with candles and flowers, but this time he also had a book, leather-bound and beautiful. "What is this?" Lucy asked, taking the book from him. "Open it," Henry said softly. Lucy opened the book to find it filled with Henry's neat handwriting, page after page of it. As she began to read, she realized it was their story, written from his perspective. The night he found her in the livery stable, his thoughts that first day and every day after. The moment he realized he loved her, their wedding, the births of their children, every important moment of their life together recorded in Henry's careful script. "Henry," Lucy whispered, tears streaming down her face, "this is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me." "I wanted you to know how I saw our story," Henry said. "How I saw you, not just in the beginning but every day since. I wanted to write it down so you would always have it, so our grandchildren would always have it, so no one would ever forget how we found each other." Lucy threw her arms around him, holding tight this man who had given her so much. "I love you," she said, "more than words can say, more than I have ever loved anyone or anything." "I love you too," Henry said. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Lucy Nash, the very best thing." They stayed in that house until dawn, reading through Henry's book together, remembering and laughing and crying over the life they had shared. It was perfect, all of it, every moment. Lucy was 68 and Henry was 70 when Henry's heart finally gave out. It happened quietly, in his sleep, On a cool spring morning, very much like the morning their first son had been born so many years ago. Lucy woke to find him gone, looking peaceful in the bed they had shared for 4 decades, and she knew immediately that he was with his parents now, with all the people who had loved him and gone before. The grief was overwhelming, a physical pain that made it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to imagine going on. But Lucy had Thomas and Rose and William, had grandchildren who needed her, had a ranch to help run and a life to continue living even though the person who had made it all possible was gone. The funeral was huge, the entire town of Elko turning out to pay respects to a man who had been respected and loved by everyone who knew him. Person after person told Lucy stories about Henry's kindness, about times he had helped them or their families, about what a good man he had been. Lucy listened to it all and thought about the night she had met him, when he had helped a stranger because that was simply who he was. In the days and weeks after the funeral, Lucy found herself returning often to the book Henry had made for their anniversary, reading his words and hearing his voice in them. She read about the moment he had found her in the livery stable, about how scared she had looked but also how brave, and she remembered that night from her own perspective. She thought about all the things that had to align for their story to happen. She had to leave Missouri. She had to come to Elko. She had to run out of money. She had to choose that particular livery stable to hide in. Henry had to be the one checking it that night. She had to trust him enough to accept his help. He had to be the kind of man worthy of that trust. So many variables, so many moments where things could have gone differently. But they had not. They had aligned exactly right, had created a love story that spanned more than 40 years and touched countless lives. Lucy lived for another 8 years after Henry's death. Years filled with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, with quiet days on the ranch that had been theirs, with memories that never faded. She watched Thomas's children grow into adults, saw Rose's son become a lawyer in San Francisco, celebrated William's daughter's wedding. She told the story often, to anyone who would listen, about the night she was sleeping in a livery stable and a cowboy gave her the master bedroom. She told it to her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, making sure they understood what it meant, this story of kindness and trust and love that had changed everything. On a warm summer evening, 2 months past her 76th birthday, Lucy sat on the porch of the ranch house watching the sunset with Thomas beside her. The sky was painted in familiar shades of orange and pink, and Lucy felt a deep sense of peace. "Tell me the story again, Mama," Thomas said, even though he had heard it 100 times. "About how you and Papa met." So Lucy told it one more time, her voice soft with memory and love. She told him about being 25 and scared and alone. About a cowboy who found her sleeping in the hay and offered her safety without expecting anything in return. About learning to trust, to love, to build a life with someone who saw her as an equal partner in everything. "That is the best love story I know," Thomas said when she finished. "It is the only love story I need," Lucy replied. "Your father taught me what love was supposed to be. He showed me every single day for 44 years, and now I will carry that love with me for whatever time I have left, and when I am gone, you will carry it forward. That is how love works. It does not end. It just keeps going, passed from one generation to the next." That night, Lucy fell asleep in her own bed, in the ranch house she and Henry had built together, surrounded by memories of a life well lived and a love that had conquered everything. She dreamed of being young again, of being found in a livery stable by a kind cowboy who would change her life forever. She dreamed of Henry saying, "I am not going to hurt you, miss," in that calm, steady voice. She dreamed of the master bedroom he had given her, of the home they had built, of the family they had created. She dreamed of every moment of joy and sorrow, every triumph and struggle, every ordinary day that had been made extraordinary by love. Lucy passed peacefully in her sleep, a smile on her face, her spirit finally reunited with the man who had saved her all those years ago in Elko, Nevada, in a dusty livery stable where their impossible, wonderful story had begun. The ranch continued under Thomas's stewardship, passed eventually to his children and his children's children. The small house in town where Lucy had first lived with Henry was preserved by the family, kept as a reminder of where it all started. And the story was told and retold through the generations. The story of a woman who was sleeping in a livery stable and the cowboy who gave her the master bedroom, who gave her everything, who proved that sometimes kindness and trust and love could change the entire world.